Little session I hope that'll help you get into this next module, Module 2, on elements and principles. And I'm hoping this will get you started a little bit. I'm going to start with this download material that I hope most of you all have downloaded by now, and talk to you a little bit about elements and principles of design. Now, elements basically are the building blocks of design, and they're the tinker toys, as it were. And principles are the way to put them together. Those are the instructions or the recipes or the blueprints, okay? And they have particular terms that help you understand what's going on. And if you're a designer or an artist, they help you kind of know what to do next, okay? We're going to start out then by looking at exactly, since we're in this whole art conundrum, we're going to look at exactly how it is that artists accomplish what it is they want to. This particular one, for an example, how does Artemisia Gentileschi focus you on the concept of what's going on? Now, this is the Judith, who is right here, and Holofernes. I don't know where that came from, who is right here. In fact, that's what we're supposed to be seeing, and hopefully that is what we're seeing. Another way, or in this particular sense, one of the strongest ways to make this point is Gentileschi makes this such a dramatic setting, not just because the deed's dramatic, but she makes it such a dramatic setting by controlling the light, the extreme lights and darks. The other thing she makes us focus on what she's doing is by making everybody look at this bloody deed, as it were. Poor Holofernes. This is a segment of the Bible that isn't included in Judith and Holofernes. The story of Judith comes from, I believe, the book of Judith, which is in the Catholic Bible but not in the Protestant Bible. So if you haven't ever heard this story, basically what happens is Judith, I think, is this, I think she's a judge of a tribe of Israel, so she's a wise woman, as it were, and she has the responsibility for the well-being of this whole tribe. And this particular instance, Holofernes is this great general from a neighboring place, and he's coming in to take over Judith's tribe, and the people turn to her for guidance, and she doesn't really know, because in her rule she has arranged it so that spending money on military buildings and ammunition and maintaining soldiers just isn't what they do. They spend most of their money on nurturing and taking care of the people that are part of this tribe, whether it's herding or crops or whatever like that. But anyway, so she doesn't know what to do to save her people. So she gets this vision, and the next morning she sallies out with her maidservant, whom you see right here, and she approaches this great general under a flag of truce, and he invites her into his tent, maybe somewhat lasciviously, to talk a bit. She gets him drunk, and then she whips out her sword and cuts off his head. Not going to comment on whether that's a moral deed, but nevertheless, that was a very popular subject during this particular period that this painting was done, which I believe is back in about the 17th century. Anyway, great painting. And she does it because she understands extreme lights and dark, makes us have drama, and she makes everybody look at Holofernes. And she also makes what we call lines, these segments of the way her arms are all encountered, and even the way his leg is posed to his arm, and the sword going up this way. Everything's directed to right here. That's just the focal point, as it is. And we'll talk about focal point as we move through this. Anyway, really remarkable way to control these. Here's another version of the same painting, Judith and Holofernes. And you can see again, artists from about the same period, and he uses this dramatic light and dark also. I said he, remember that. There'll probably be a question later about that, but anyway. About the same period and another bloody deed. They're certainly different though, aren't they? Okay, and here's another one again. What's the main focal point? Da Vinci, we're all familiar with this painting, of course. Da Vinci manages to focus on Christ because, after all, Christ is the center of this story, And he focuses our attention on Christ by essentially putting him in the center of this window, of this very geometric shape, and contrasting his shape, kind of organic. All of these lines sort of pointing, everybody looking. We have to focus on Christ. So Da Vinci was good at this bit too. Now, elements, basically, and I've given you a few already without telling you, these are the elements of design: line, shape, color, value, and space. And as you go through the rest of this video, it'll give you some definitions and show you some examples of what we mean on all these, okay? See if I can get you started. Line. Here's a great definition for line. Line is a mark made by a moving point. That's a mathematical definition, isn't it? And having psychological impact according to its direction, its weight, and the variations in its direction. And weight, I might add. This is the definition of line. And then it has properties: quality and direction. Quality is the weight. We just talked about that. And direction. Is it up and down? Is it diagonal? Is it back and forth? And then we talk about kinds of lines, and we talked about those a minute ago: implied, psychic, and actual lines. Implied lines are lines that basically are suggested by marks. Maybe you have a series of dotted lines. Psychic lines, certainly an arrow pointing, the way people are looking, that makes you want to complete that line mentally, all right? So a psychic line is something that directs your attention so that you make this kind of point, or you kind of complete that line with your mind, trying to see where that's pointing to or who's looking at what. And then, of course, an actual line that we defined up here, and lots of actual lines in this wonderful Da Vinci drawing. Here's another Da Vinci drawing. Obviously, he was a master of the line. Actual lines. These are called hatching, when an artist uses parallel lines to make a direction or to change a value, maybe give you a little shading. We call that hatching. Cross-hatching is where the lines cross, a series of parallel crossed over by another series of parallel. And here's a definition down here, the way lines are used to create shading. Here's an ink drawing, and the pen line gives you these wonderful thicknesses. You see that very fine and then the very deep. You can see how a very thick line gives you the feeling of depth, or shading, as it were. That's the weight of line, the quality of line. Horizontal line has a meaning. It suggests a feeling of rest or repose, and all the other lines. Certainly, here's another one. Here's a Gauguin painting called Nevermore. You have the feeling of this young woman kind of laying or resting, a very horizontal kind of line in this one. There's a wonderful story about this, about Gauguin, and if I remember it correctly, and don't butcher it as much as I did the Judith and Holofernes, I'll try to do better. Gauguin had this young mistress when he was living in Tahiti, and one day he's in the village in town, and he comes home after dark, and this young woman is lying on his bed sobbing, and the house is all dark, and he walks in, and he doesn't know what to say to her, so he tries to comfort her and tries to figure out what's upsetting her. And basically what she's talking about is, or what she manages to convey to him, is the spirit of the dead are watching her, and they frightened her. So she's laying in bed very afraid, you see. And of course Gauguin uses this wonderful reference up here, Nevermore. He titles it, and he gives us this raven. You remember the Edgar Allan Poe, Nevermore, quoth the raven, right? So he gives us this wonderful image. Now later he comes back and does another version of this that I think is much better, but this is very nice. It shows how he interprets her fear of death or dying. This is a vertical line, certainly. These very up and down things, they communicate a feeling of loftiness or spirituality here in this cathedral. Also potential movement. That's what vertical lines tell us. Here's another vertical. You see this is a wonderful painting.